Welcome to Living in the Go. Today I want to talk to you about the cost of being poor. And you might think, well, I'm really struggling. My income is low, don't have much money in the bank, and it's really hard for me. And there are reasons why you're struggling so much. You might think it's just because of your low income. Well, there are things that are put in place that are making it even harder for you. So let's get into that. So, what costs are higher? So, if you think about, let's start with food. You may not have a lot of grocery stores in your community. If you're living in an area that's considered low income, high crime, or whatever, there might be very few grocery stores. If you live in a rural area, same thing. The thing that has the most services for you might be your local Walmart, where they sell food and everything else. But again, no other grocery stores. So it's very challenging. And the cost is higher. If you live in an area that's considered a food desert, the food might be extremely high in that particular store, might not be great quality, and you have very few options because instead of you having a grocery store every mile, you have a grocery store in the whole area. So it's just pretty mind-boggling, but that's one way that it impacts you when you're low income. The other thing to consider is transportation. And there are two aspects for this. One, you may not have good transportation in your area. Again, if you're living in a rural area, you might not have that. So it's so much more expensive. And the other thing too, if you live in an area that's considered low income or high crime, there may be very few car dealerships. And the ones that are there, I don't want to say they take advantage, but they might be charging higher interest rates. They have low inventory, so not a good selection for you to choose from. Let's talk about rent. So if you're living in an area that's considered high crime or a poverty area, the landlord might feel like there are too many risks to rent to people there, so he's going to add more money onto the cost of the rent to incur any damages or things that might happen with that rental unit. So you, as a result, have to pay more for rent, or even if you have a mortgage, you might have a higher interest rate because of the area where you buy at. So those are things or factors that are put in place to hurt you or to hinder you. Healthcare. You may be living in a rural area and they have taken away the hospital that was there because no funding. So you might have to drive for hundreds of miles to just find care. It's mind-boggling to me how those things are not considered important in specific types of areas. If you live in an area that's considered low income or high crime, there may be very few doctor's offices, very few clinics. Again, no hospitals in place. Let's look at insurance. Just buying insurance. If you have a car, depending on where you live at, you're going to pay a higher rate for your insurance because again, their answer to that is, well, you live in an area that's high crime, so we're taking a risk, so you have to pay more for your insurance. Car insurance, home insurance, health insurance, whatever. Even a burial, and I'll give you an example. A dear friend of mine had to bury her father, and when she went to the local funeral director, it was so cost prohibitive, and she was like, this is ridiculous. She wound up going out to the suburbs where it was 1/3 of the cost for the same services, and they did a wonderful job for her. But the fact that she had to leave her community to go somewhere else for the same services, it's ridiculous. Education, it depends. If you live in an area that's considered low income, poverty area, or even a rural area, the education, it may not be in abundance. It may not be the best quality. You may not have the best teachers. You don't have resources, equipment, because you're being penalized. If your school systems are tied to property taxes, if there are not a lot of homes in the area, so you get the picture. So you pay a higher cost. So those are things to consider, and you might be thinking you're struggling and it's all your fault, and it really isn't. It's a system that's been put into place that keeps you down. So, and I do have my beliefs. Let's talk about those. So you team up with neighbors to create a food co-op. That's very simple. Maybe one of the people on the block has a reliable car, means of transportation, and you put your list together and your money and you pool it all and you go to areas to find better quality food. Maybe if it's farmers markets or even big grocery stores, big co-ops, because they have those in place, and you shop for the block. It's one way to do it. It's not optimal, I'll give you that, but it is cost savings. You can work with your local government. If you complain to neighbors all the time about things not being fair, that doesn't help you. But the people who represent you in your city's government, let them know that you're struggling. Let them know why things aren't working. Let them know that you will not give them your vote if they don't do something about it. Be very vocal. They work for you. Support your local businesses, because if the local business isn't giving you what you need, give them the feedback and say, you would get more from us. We would support you more if you were able to do this. We're giving you this feedback. What can we do to support you? What can we do to help you to provide better services for us? Make it a hand-in-hand situation where you're working with the local businesses. They'll appreciate it, and you will get what you need from it as well. Negotiate the cost of your rent. Now, I know the landowner, he may feel like this is something that's out of his control. Well, it really isn't. There are things you can negotiate. If you say, well, I'm an ideal tenant, I can help keep the property clean. I'll let you know when things are happening, those sorts of things. Or even negotiate the rent. Instead of getting a 1-year lease, maybe ask for an 18-month lease. That tells him that he's going to have guaranteed income coming in for that rental property beyond the 12 months, so he doesn't have to worry about trying to lease it out or something like that. They're willing to work with you sometimes if you negotiate, but give them some options. You also want to think about alternatives to the traditional burials, because burials are expensive, and I know thinking about an alternative way to say goodbye to a loved one is challenging, especially in communities of color. I'm going to be cremated. My family knows that. It's an alternative to a traditional burial. It's more cost effective, and I feel like it's right for me. And it certainly will save a lot of money, money that can go back to my family and not be spent on a costly funeral. So think about alternatives. I've heard of people who donate their bodies to science. There are different things that you can do. In terms of the schools, find out how your schools are being funded. If it's strictly tied to the property taxes in your area, and you know if you live in a low income place, there's not a lot of property taxes coming in, so not a lot of money. So find out if there are ways that you can get additional funding for your school, whether it be grants. There are a lot of things that are out there if we just try to get that information. Work with your local schools because you want to have the best quality schooling for your children. And you don't want to necessarily have to do a private school because, again, you don't have the funds for that. I hope this presentation was helpful for you. And if you enjoyed it, then please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and if you're not a subscriber, please do so today. Please come to our community because I'm hoping that there are things on my channel that you will appreciate and enjoy and can use. So thanks again and have a great day.